Let's talk investing. I'm sure we've all felt the pain of inflation and an increasingly expensive world. Houses aren't affordable, flights are crazy expensive, and going out to eat is almost starting to feel like a bit of a luxury. Wouldn't it be nice to be rich and have the freedom and comfort that comes with being financially stable? I know investing can seem a little intimidating, so in this video, we're going to go over some practical advice on how you can invest your first $1,000 literally today. I'll also share my screen on my laptop at various points so you can follow along on your own computer and turn the concepts we're talking about into real investments. Now, to be clear, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Instead, it's a full guide of all the strategies the wealthy class use to gain multiple millions of dollars. Let's dive in. The first consideration that's important when it comes to investing our money is how soon do you want or need the money, because that will drastically affect the different types of investment choices we'll be making. The general rule of thumb is the longer you're okay not using the money, the more that money can grow. This is due to both higher average yearly growth and tax advantages we can get in retirement accounts like 401ks and IRAs. Let's say you need the money soon though, and by soon I mean sometime in the next 5 years. That brings us to the first and easiest option for growing your money, which is high yield cash accounts. Now, I'm sure you're probably all familiar with large banks like Chase, Wells Fargo, Citibank, and you're maybe using a checking account or savings account at one of these banks to store a lot, if not all of your money. The big problem with keeping so much of your money in one of those accounts is it's basically just sitting there, right? And it's not growing in value at all. So if you deposit $1,000 today, in 1 year, it's still $1,000, and in 10 years, it's still $1,000. Theoretically, that's where the difference between checkings and savings accounts comes into play, right? Where checkings accounts are meant for, day-to-day access to your money, and savings accounts are meant for, saving and growing your money. The problem with traditional savings accounts in these big banks is although they're making the promise that your money's going to grow, the money doesn't really grow much at all. APY rates for these big banks generally ranges from 0.01% to 0.05%. where APY stands for annual percentage yield, which is the amount of interest you can expect on your money over the course of a year. Which means if you deposited $1,000 and waited a total of 10 years with a rate of 0.05%, which was the high end, you'd have a grand total of $1,005, which means in 10 whole years, you gain $5. Honestly, in 10 years, you could probably find more than $5 by just looking for loose change on the ground. That's where high yield cash accounts come into play. These accounts function very similarly to your typical big bank checkings or savings accounts, except instead of APY rates of 0.01% to 0.05%, we're looking at rates of 4.5% to 5%, which is quite literally like 90 to 500 times better. Which, kind of makes you wonder why anyone would use a traditional savings account in the first place. Going back to our previous example, if you invested $1,000 and waited 10 years, and let's take the low end of that spectrum of interest rates, let's use 4.5%, you'd end up with a grand total of $1,553, which is more than a 50% increase on your initial investment. And that's way more than the $1,005 you would have had you invested in a traditional savings account. While these cash accounts are, technically brokerages, not banks, the money behind the scenes is still stored in banks. So that importantly means your money is still FDIC insured. This means if there's a catastrophic failure, the government will make sure you get your money back. Now, there are a variety of different cash account companies out there, but the two that I'm personally familiar with are Wealthfront and Betterment. And just to be clear, I'm not sponsored by either of these, so this is just an honest, unbiased recommendation from my part. Although if either of you wants to sponsor me, let me know. They both, provide similar APY rates of 5% and 4.75% respectively, have no monthly fees, and they both get you FDIC insurance on your money. I personally use Wealthfront, but really either one's fine. For a quick walkthrough, let me show you how easy it is to use, on my laptop right here. Feel free to pull out your computer too if you want to follow along. All right, let's see here. Let's open an internet browser. In my case, I use Google Chrome, and let's type in wealthfront.com into the address bar. I already have an account, so I would just log in, but if you don't, you'll first need to create an account yourself. So, let's tap on Get Started in the upper right-hand corner here. Okay, so, seeing here on screen, there are a bunch of different ways you can use this account. And if you wanted to use your account in different ways, you could use your same Wealthfront account for all of them in the future if you'd like. But here we're just focused on the high interest cash account. So we'll click on the first one here, which is earn 5% APY on all your cash. Let's click Just Me on this next screen here. We'll fill in our first and last name. Let's hit Next again, and then type in our email and create a password. Once you hit the continue button, you should get an email with a link to finalize opening your account. I already have one. I already have an account, so I'll go ahead and just log into mine now. All right, now that we're here, I'll go to the transfer money tab at the top over here. On this next screen, I'll click on the row that says deposit into Wealthfront. On this screen, it should say you're transferring money into your individual cash account right here at the top, that your funds are coming, from some bank account, and you can choose how often you want this deposit to happen and how much you want to deposit, how much you want it to be. If you just created this account, this Wealthfront account, you'll need to link a bank account. So in the pop-up that comes up right here, like we see on screen, choose whichever bank you have and input your login information for that account. So your bank account can be linked to your Wealthfront account. So remember, like, you're putting in your information for the bank account, not your Wealthfront account. Once you've done all that, you can then choose your deposit amount and how often you want it to happen. You could just choose $1,000 and one time, but if you have extra money you want to put here regularly, let's say maybe a certain percentage of your paycheck, you can put that number here and schedule it to be monthly, once every 2 weeks, or whatever else. The sort of nuances around scheduling, I think, would make this video probably a bit too long, but definitely let me know if that's something you would want me to get into, and I can talk about it. Honestly, you can sort of just use Wealthfront as your home base for your money if you want. You can write checks from here, you can have your paychecks deposited directly here. But if you have reasons you like the bank you've been using, like maybe you enjoy the relationships you've established with the people who work at your local branch, there's nothing wrong with sticking with them. And that's it. Once we hit this button, we'll have $1,000 in our Wealthfront account, and that will passively start growing by 5% in the background. Just to reiterate, putting your money in a high yield cash account makes the most sense if you need access to the money, soon. And if you want to guarantee that your money, the value of your money won't go down. However, if you want to maximize the amount that your money can grow, you can get a much better rate than 4.5 to 5% growth year over year if you take a longer term approach. Which, brings us to our next topic, which is breaking down the different types of investment accounts you can have. There are, broadly speaking, two different types of investment accounts. Standard brokerage accounts and retirement accounts. The big distinction between these two is how investment gains are taxed and when you can withdraw your money. Retirement accounts are tax advantaged, which means you get some sort of benefit in relation to taxes. These tax savings can save you a whole lot of money, but the big caveat is you have to wait until your retirement age to withdraw the money, which is 59 and a half years old. If you decide to withdraw earlier than that, then you will very likely have to pay penalty fees. Standard brokerage accounts they're taxable, which means you don't get any sort of tax benefits. But, the big positive here is you can withdraw anytime. So if you need to make, a big purchase between 5 years from now and when you turn 59 and a half years old, this could be a pretty good option for you. Let's start with retirement accounts because while yes, we can't withdraw until we retire, I'm sure we all plan on retiring someday. And, the tax advantages we get from these retirement accounts makes an absolutely massive difference in the amount of money we end up with. There are, several different retirement accounts out there, but the two most common and popular accounts are 401ks and IRAs. And those are the two we'll go over today. The main difference between these two is that 401ks are offered by your employer, whereas IRAs, you have to set up as an individual. Not all employers offer 401ks, but many of them do. So if your employer does, this is a great place to start for long-term investing. The way this works is if you sign up for a 401k with your employer, every pay cycle, your employer will take a certain percentage of your paycheck and put that directly into your 401k account, where it then starts growing on your behalf. This account is managed by whatever 401k provider your company uses, which also means that they handle how your money gets invested. This in turn means that besides deciding how much of your money you want going into the account in each pay cycle, you don't have to do anything more hands-on. You don't have to make any more decisions if you don't want to, which means this is a super convenient way to get started on investing. Now, there are two main ideas to keep in mind here, and that's employer matching and what type of 401k account to use. Now, some companies out there offer something called employer match, which means your company will put in the same amount of money into your 401k that you put in. So, if you put in, let's say, $500, that means your employer will put in an additional $500. This is quite literally no strings attached. It's free money. So if your employer offers this, which is a pretty sweet job perk if it's offered, absolutely take it 100%. Usually, there's a limit to this, like your employer will only match up to a certain percentage of money that you put in. So whatever they offered, honestly, my recommendation is just max it out. Take as much money as you can, because again, it's free money. Another option your employer might offer is a choice between a traditional 401k and a Roth 401k. Traditional 401ks are tax deferred and Roth 401ks are tax exempt. This means that, for traditional 401ks, while you don't have to pay any taxes when you deposit money in, whenever you withdraw, that withdrawal is treated as income and that income gets taxed. Roth 401ks are tax exempt. So that means, you pay taxes before you deposit into your account, but then whenever you withdraw, you don't have to pay any taxes. I highly recommend Roth 401ks over traditional 401ks because for any gains that your investment makes, even if it's something like insane, like your gains have grown by like 5,000%, you don't have to pay taxes on any of it. Now, let's move on to IRAs. IRAs are another type of retirement account, like 401ks, but unlike 401ks, these are not set up by your employer. So you have to set it up yourself. You have the same choice of, traditional versus Roth for IRAs, just like you have for 401ks. And again, I highly recommend going Roth because again, for any gains that your investment makes, those gains are yours. You don't get taxed on any of it. All that money goes to you. If you decide to go with an IRA, whether that's like a Roth or a traditional IRA, one crucial step you're going to have to take is deciding how that money gets invested. This is also true for the standard brokerage account that we mentioned earlier that does not get any tax benefits. There are a whole lot of different options here. You could invest your money, in individual stocks or bonds, but really the best choice that you can make is investing in an index fund. And that's because index funds are the safest, best performing, and most reliable option out there. And you don't have to just take my word for it. Let's get into a little bit of background to back that claim up. So, you could invest all of your money into a single stock, but that's risky, right? Stocks are tied to the company's performance. So if the company's doing well, then sure, yeah, your stock can go up, your money can go up in value. But, if the company goes down, then your stock goes down as well. And that means all your money, if it's invested in that one stock, also just gets totally wiped out with that one company's failure. A common way to deal with this is through diversification. So instead of putting like all your money into one stock, you put a little tiny bit of money into a bunch of different stocks out there. So, if one stock does poorly, sure, you'll lose some money, but the rest of your stocks are completely unaffected, which also means the rest of your money is completely unaffected. One way to think about it is that with diversification, instead of, having ownership of like one company, you kind of have a little bit of ownership of the entire economy. While, single companies can fail basically all the time, which means if you had all your money invested in one, your money could get totally wiped out with that one company. The economy, even though it goes through ups and downs, throughout history, and we've certainly seen downs like with the 2008 financial crisis, it's basically impossible for the entire economy to fail, which also means it's basically impossible for you to lose all of your money. Now, we have a few options in order to achieve this diversification. One, you could choose a bunch of different stocks yourself. Two, you could pay a smart financial advisor to actively invest in stocks for you. And three, you can invest in a fund that tracks, a bunch of different stocks, but isn't actively managed by like a person. Let's explore option one. In order to buy enough stocks on your own to achieve this diversification, not only do you have to do like many hours of research to figure out, what stocks to pick, you also have to be actively, constantly thinking about when do I buy? When do I sell? How do I manage all of this? Not only is this time consuming and stressful, but honestly, we're probably not going to do a very good job of it, and we're probably going to end up losing a lot of money. Now, let's explore option two. There are people who, dedicate their entire careers to investing, so it's a better option, right, to turn to one of those people instead of trying to do it ourselves. However, it turns out that although these experts might be better at picking stocks than we are, we also have to pay them a lot of money in order to do this job for us. And if we're doing all of this, in order to make money, that's kind of defeating the purpose, right? Even not accounting for these fees, the vast majority of financial experts actually get beaten a lot by in terms of how much money they make by option number 3. The way option 3 works is that you buy shares of a single thing. In that case, that thing is a passively or non-actively managed fund. The price of shares of that fund mirrors the performance of all the stocks that fund is tracking as if you had bought every single one of those stocks individually yourself. Actively managed funds actually very rarely beat out these passively managed funds, to the point where famous investor and one of the richest people in the world, Warren Buffett, you might have heard of him, made a $1 million bet to prove it. In 2007, Buffett claimed that he could beat a very qualified investment firm by putting $1 million in what's known as an index fund and just letting it sit, not touching it, for 10 years. And the investment firm could do whatever they wanted. And spoiler, he ended up winning in a complete landslide. At the end of 2017, Warren Buffett's investment had grown by, I want to say 125.8%, while the investment firm only had a return of 36.3%, I believe. Now, just for a quick summary, with option number 1, we have low costs but poor performance. With option 2, we have high costs and medium performance. And with option 3, we have low costs and high performance. Now that we know that option 3, for choosing a fund is the best choice to make, let's get into how to actually choose a fund. There are many different funds out there, but the main thing to keep in mind is you want to choose a fund that has low fees. Every fund has something that's known as an expense ratio, which is the sort of like convenience fee that you get charged for the convenience of being able to buy, shares of a single thing as opposed to buying each one of those stocks individually. These expense ratios are measured as a percentage of your total investment. So let's say as an example, you have an investment of $1,000 and the fund's expense ratio rate is 1%. That means you'll pay $10 every year for your money to be managed in this fund. It's also important to keep in mind that while this expense ratio percentage stays the same, as your investment grows, the amount of dollars you have to pay in fees of management, that part increases. This is because that percentage is taken out based on the size of your total, your current investment, not what you started with. So, as an example, let's say your investment of $1,000 has grown to $1 million. Now you'll be paying fees of $10,000 every year. These expense ratios can range from anywhere like very close to 0% all the way to 2% or sometimes even higher. A good rule of thumb is to not choose an expense ratio of above 0.5%. But honestly, I would be much more aggressive with this and try to get much closer to 0, because just the expense ratio doesn't actually mean anything in terms of like how good the fund is, how likely it is for your money to grow. There is no benefit to you as an investor whatsoever. The only funds that fit this profile of low expense ratios are index funds, which if you remember is the same type of fund that Warren Buffett used in his famous 10-year bet. An index fund is a fund whose holdings mirror a particular index, where an index is something that tracks the ups and downs of a particular group of stocks. Some of the most well-known indexes are the NASDAQ, the Dow Jones, and the S&P 500. Let's zoom in on that last one, the S&P 500, which is also the same index that Warren Buffett's index fund was mirrored against. The S&P 500 is an index of the 500 of the largest companies in the United States, and it's a convenient way to get a rough picture of how the entire US economy is doing in just one convenient metric. You buy shares in an S&P 500 index fund, and under the hood, you essentially have ownership of all 500 of S&P 500 companies. Investing in an index fund is a great idea for long-term investors. And just to reiterate, by long-term investors, I mean someone who doesn't need the money in the next 5 years. Now, the reason behind that is because the economy, it goes up and down over time. There are going to be years where the economy does really well, and there are also going to be years where the economy does really poorly, like the 2008 financial crisis. If you need the money soon and don't have any control over that date, you don't want to be caught in a down year where the economy has, tanked, and you withdraw your money at a loss. That being said, the long-term trajectory of the economy is always up. Now, I don't know what will happen to the world economies in the next few months or even the next year, but I can say with confidence over the coming years and decades, the companies of the world will continue to work, they'll continue to grow, make new inventions, and ultimately profit. Those profits end up going back to the investors, and the more that you're invested in these companies, the more of a payout that you get. As an example, we can look at the S&P 500 over the last month. Definitely some ups and downs, but now we can look at a year, some ups and downs, but definitely up overall. Then let's see if we can zoom out to 5 years. And even though we had quite a significant dip when we all had to lock down because of COVID, here at the beginning of 2020, we're still way above that point, even before COVID hit. Then going all the way out to, just all time, we're just steadily going up and up and up. Even the peaks that were before major recessions, like here and here, they're way lower than what we're at currently. Now that we have all that information, let's actually get on our computers and see start to finish how we can invest $1,000 right now. All right, so I want to invest in an S&P 500 index fund, and I want to make sure the fees are low. So let's just type that into Google, low fee, S&P 500 index funds. All right, this link looks pretty promising, so let's just go there. Okay, let's see. Let's find the information I care about. Okay, great. Here's a list of 9 different funds. At a quick glance, I would probably eliminate, these three since the expense ratios are quite a bit higher than the other ones. It looks like anywhere from like 5 to 10 times higher. I think any of the other options are good bets. This Fidelity one with an expense ratio of 0 looks particularly enticing because that means, at least at first glance, without doing any further research, that you won't be paying any fees, which is a pretty sweet deal. A lot of the time, and particularly as a first-time investor, I think it makes a lot of sense to go with one of the big established players in the space because they're handling a lot of your money, right? The three arguably biggest players are Vanguard, Fidelity, and Schwab, all of whom we see in this list. Going with any one of those three is fine. So if you have an existing account with one of them, maybe you want to just use that account as opposed to creating a new account with a new company and having to keep track of and manage that in addition to your old account. So, just to choose just any example to look into, let's look at the Schwab one. But again, any of the three that we talked about, Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab, they're all good options. All right, let's just do some, basic research into this Schwab index fund and, verify the basic details around it. Let's just copy the symbol, also known as the ticker name, because this is a pretty specific identifier, and we'll just paste it into Google. Okay, this site is definitely Charles Schwab, which is good. We want to be looking directly at the source here. If we scroll down a bit, we see this section that says fees and minimum. And okay, great. That's the same expense ratio of 0.02% that we'd seen earlier. There's also this minimum initial investment that says no minimum. Some funds require you to invest a minimum particular amount, let's say, $10,000. And if you want to invest less than that, they just won't let you. We have no minimum here, so we're good to go to invest our $1,000. This fund looks legit, so let's go ahead and invest in this one. Okay, so the next step is logging in if you have an existing account or creating a new one if you don't. Looks like we're on a help page for Charles Schwab though, and not their main website, so I'm just gonna Google Charles Schwab to get to their website. If you already have an account, you can just log in up here, or you can create an account by hitting the button over here. I've already created an account, so I'm just gonna log in. Okay, so in order to purchase shares of the fund that we want, we need to actually get cash from our bank account into this account first. So you'll need to go to Move Money up here and then click on Transfers and Payments. You're going to want to click on Online Transfers, which allows you to transfer money from either, a Schwab bank account or another non-Schwab bank account. We just want cash, so we're gonna select Cash Only. I have a bank account already linked, but if you don't have one linked, you can click on this up here, or we can click on External Accounts up at the top here. Click on Add Account, select the Schwab account you want to link your bank account to, then fill in all the appropriate information about whether your account type is checking or savings, whether or not you're the account holder, and then your routing and account number, which you can usually either find either in your bank's online portal or by looking at the numbers at the bottom of any checks you have in your checkbook. All right, let's see, we hit continue, and then you're good to go. You'll have to wait, I think 2 to 4 days for your bank account to get validated and connected, and then you can start transferring money. Now, assuming it's been those 2 to 4 days, let's go back to setting up our transfer from our bank account. We choose the account, which should now show up in the list below, and select the Schwab account that you want to transfer into, which will be your brokerage account or Roth IRA. Here we can type in the cash amount that we want, which in our case is $1,000. We can also select a frequency, if we want to set up regularly scheduled investments, which I'd highly encourage as a general practice, but again, goes beyond the scope of just investing, the $1,000 we were talking about today. So just right now, we'll select one time for right now. Then you choose a transfer date. You can choose now or really any date in the future if you want it to be later. You hit continue, review the transfer details, and then you're good to go. It'll likely take a day or so for the cash to actually appear in your account, but it's important to note that you are not done just yet. At this point, it's just cash sitting in your account, but we still want to actually invest that money in our index fund. So we go to trade at the top, click all-in-one trade ticket. We enter the ticker symbol over here, which in our case was SWPPX, and we can verify over here that this corresponds to the Schwab S&P 500 index. And then we set our action to buy since we're trying to buy shares, and then type in $1,000 over here since that's the amount we want to spend. We go ahead and click review order, make sure that everything on here looks correct to us, and then go ahead and click place order. And then we're done. We've officially invested $1,000 in an index fund. If this is your first time ever doing this, if this is your first time ever investing, congratulations. Again, I know investing can be pretty scary. It definitely was for me the first time I ever did it, so I know how much of a mental leap it takes to get to this point. High yield cash accounts are great if you're looking to make a big purchase sometime in the next 0 to 5 years, like let's say a house or a car, and you don't want to worry about the market being volatile, going up and down when you really need the money. Retirement accounts are the best when it comes to maximizing the amount of money you make because you're saving money on taxes, and are best if you can wait until you're 59 and a half years old, which is when you're going to retire. And generally, Roth 401ks, Roth IRAs, just remember the word Roth. Those are the best, when picking retirement accounts. Standard brokerage accounts are for everything else. So when you need the money between 5 years from now and 59 and a half, or when you turn 59 and a half. And that wraps us up here. If you made it this far, I hope that means this was some useful information to you, and now you're well on your way in your financial journey. And hopefully you find investing just a little bit less intimidating now that you've seen this. I tried to be as thorough as I possibly could here, but it's totally possible I missed something. So if there's anything you have questions about, feel free to post in the comments and I will do my best to try and answer. And this is YouTube. I have to do it. If you enjoyed this at all, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, all those things. Other than that, that's it. See y'all later.